He felt very disrespected, and so he wanted revenge.
He's been humiliated. You've got to retaliate.
He was so angry, so bent on getting one guy that he didn't care who else had to get hurt.
I found it pretty chilling. He showed absolutely no remorse.
The city of Rock Hill, South Carolina, sits just 20 miles south of Charlotte.
The Rock Hill community is grown up around the downtown area, and then, of course, neighborhoods keep building out of that. And so the neighborhoods closest to downtown are the oldest ones, and then things that begin to push out towards York and Charlotte and Fort Mill, some of the newer, more modern type neighborhoods. But overall, the whole community is very focused on sports, athletics, great school system, lots of parks and playgrounds, and generally a really great place to raise a family.
On August 9th, 2015, it's around 11 p.m. when multiple calls come into the Rock Hill Police Department's 911 dispatch center.
At this time, the neighbors heard 8 to 9 gunshots ringing out. No one knows what's going on. There's chaos on the scene.
Noise complaints are extremely frequent, especially in the Frank Street area. Hearing gunshots also is not infrequent, even if it's just something innocent like someone shooting in their backyard for fun. But in this case, the noise complaint coincided with gunshots. There happened to be other officers nearby who heard those as well.
And they heard multiple gunshots ring out, followed by the sound of screeching tires.
The officers who are already close by are able to get over to Frank Street pretty quickly.
There were quite a number of people around the victim who was in the front yard.
They find a man laying in the grass, face first, bleeding from his head with an apparent gunshot wound.
He was shot twice, once in his arm and once in the head.
It appeared he saw the shooter and threw up his arms to block the shot, but when he was shot in the head, he immediately went down.
They located a faint pulse on him. He was still alive at the scene at the time.
They roll him over to administer first aid, and they find the gun underneath him.
The gun was just lying between him and the ground. It was a handgun, so it was pretty clear that he had either been holding it or it had fallen out of his waistband where he fell. But they did just treat him right there until the medics arrived.
Since the .380 caliber gun was found underneath Anthony, police think that he was carrying it.
They didn't know exactly what had happened, but one, it's not unusual for people in that neighborhood to carry weapons for protection, and two, it could have easily been assumed that he and another person were possibly shooting at each other. They wouldn't have known that until they got the area cleared and were able to begin searching for spent shell casings. He also had his South Carolina identification in his pocket.
The man is identified as 30-year-old Anthony DeMond Hart.
The victim's still alive. They're trying to work him, trying to save him. He is transported to a hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Many of the people who are out in the street know Anthony, and so word gets around pretty quickly.
They called me and it was like, man, Anthony just got shot. I was like, what? So, like I said, I got the keys, took off to the hospital. His friends was there and family was there. It was kind of a couple laughs at first, just joking about things in the past, but because we didn't know the severity of it.
Anthony Hart was born on August 12, 1984.
Anthony was born and raised in Rock Hill. He lived there his whole life.
He got a little brother. He kind of took him under his wing. You know how it is growing up with sisters and brothers. You yelling at them and fussing and fighting. You know, it's always yelling, somebody yelling at somebody. Anthony act just like his father. His father is loud, just like Anthony was loud. His mother, she was laid back. We met in high school. If I could describe him with one word, It'd be loud. You knew Anthony was somewhere nearby and didn't even see him, but you heard him.
Anthony had a lot of friends. He played sports, and his mom's house was always filled. He had a lot of personality and a really big heart.
The list goes on with very kind, hard moments he did. And he'll give you the shirt off his back. Me and Anthony graduated in 2002. Anthony went straight into the work field. We both did, kind of started working right out of high school. When it came down to it, to pay the bills, we were hard workers.
He became a father in his early 20s, and then he went on to have 2 more kids.
He has 2 boys and a little girl. He loved his children. He was a great, great family man. He was a great father.
Anthony eventually went to school to be an electrician. He thought that would be a good career and he would be able to support his kids. So when he wasn't with his kids or working, he liked to hang out with his friends in the neighborhood.
In our free time, we played cards. We loved to gamble. We might gamble on who walking in the door next. But it was mainly cards, dice, stuff like that, football games. We would gamble on anything.
He was a good guy who worked hard and kept a low profile. He loved his kids and would help anyone who needed it.
He was one of those guys that you just wouldn't expect to have no drama, no beef.
On the night of August 9th, 2015, word that Anthony had been shot shocks his friends and family. They gather at a hospital in Charlotte, where they wait for an update.
Mama and Daddy, they were there because we didn't know, the situation at first. Everybody kind of was filling in what was going on, so I kind of got filled in when I got there.
Anthony was shot in his left temple and twice in his left forearm. Apparently, Anthony was trying to block the shots with his forearm, and Anthony then died not long after he arrived at the hospital. The shot to the temple proved fatal.
When we got the news that he had passed away, man, it was just like chaos everywhere. Everybody started screaming and crying. I remember me personally, I got to like a corner and I just balled up, man, and was just crying because I couldn't believe it. We just all just broke. It was terrifying.
Back in Rock Hill, homicide detectives arrive on Frank Street.
I do not know exactly if it was during transport or very shortly after. I remember that we had not been on the scene all that long before we were notified that he had died.
It just seemed as a regular shooting call, but after he died, it took it to a whole different level. It was now a homicide case.
We located 7 shell casings that were of a .22 caliber. They were all near the back of the house, though. There were none near Anthony or his, where he fell. The shooting had happened from sort of the back side of the house towards the side of it, which would have given a direct line of sight to the roadway where he was located.
The casings looked like they were from some type of long gun or rifle. They all appeared to come from the same weapon.
But not from the .380 found underneath Anthony.
It was apparent that his weapon had not been fired. It was fully loaded. There were obviously no spent casings around him.
It was pretty clear that he was carrying a gun, probably for his own protection, but he never had a chance to fire it in his defense.
Police speak with the witnesses.
People had fled the area after the shooting happened for fear of their safety. But there were quite a number of people who had been inside the home there playing some cards that night, just hanging out, sort of having a kickback, as they call it. And they were all mostly outside looking at the situation.
One of them is a man named Roderick Wright.
Mr. Wright was just a longtime friend of the victim, Mr. Hart, and he was another one of the persons there that evening playing cards and hanging out.
Roderick tells investigators that Anthony had also been in the house.
So they were just generally hanging out that evening. I don't know how long they had been playing, but at some point he stepped outside, I guess, to get some fresh air.
Roderick went with him.
He was speaking with his friend Roderick Wright, and they were just catching up outside the home where there was a card game going on.
And as they were speaking, Roderick spotted someone sort of pop out from behind the back of the house, wearing all black.
It seemed weird, and it put both of them on edge.
He saw that person step back behind the house, and he said to Mr. Hart, let's go back inside. They began to walk back into the house out of concern for this man that he saw in the shadows.
So Anthony hesitated for a minute, and then he said, I got to get something out of my car.
Anthony went to his vehicle. We don't know for sure what he did, but our assumption is that he got his handgun out of the vehicle to protect himself and his friend as they were then going to go back inside the house where they would feel more safe. And then they were turning to go walk back inside.
Before they could get inside, the man reemerged.
This man stepped back out from the side of the house again and indiscriminately opened fire.
There was just gunshots, one after the other, just out of the blue.
Rock Hill, South Carolina police are investigating the shooting death of 30-year-old Anthony Hart. Investigators on the scene speak with Anthony's friend and witness to the shooting, Roderick Wright.
A man came from the side of the house, dressed in all black, just opened up fire, started shooting, and he said he panicked and fled the scene.
He was definitely on edge and scared and had gotten his car and sped away. So it was a very traumatic moment for him.
The witness stated that he fled from the scene in fear of getting shot himself. So as soon as he heard that the coast was clear, he came back.
Roderick's statement helps investigators develop a theory.
If someone is dressed in all black with a weapon sneaking up behind the house, the theories would then be that they were there to intentionally rob or kill someone. It wasn't a random act of violence. It wasn't like an argument that went sideways. And because there was a card game going on inside the house where money was being used in the betting, it was assumed that possibly the suspect was there to rob the people of their money at the card game.
Other witnesses who'd been at the card game report that one man left early and angry.
Sean Durham had been at the card game and lost his money and left angry and upset that he had lost the money. And it was assumed that he had come back to rob everyone to take back his money. That was the initial rumor that was circulating in the streets, and we heard that from many different people that night.
But Roderick can't say one way or another whether Sean was the shooter.
Roderick was only able to say that the suspect was wearing all black because the backside of those houses on Frank Street is very dark, especially that late at night. Very few of them have any back porch lights. And so it would have been pitch black, and Roderick would have been looking from a well-lit position in the street into darkness. And so he would not have been able to give any sort of a positive identification of the shooter.
They actually find Sean and talk to him. He admits that he left angry, but insists that he had nothing to do with the murder. He says that he went to a friend's house and stayed there the rest of the night.
Sean is still a suspect this time, but he could be lying about his alibi, so this time he's just a person of interest.
There's nothing connecting him to the shooting. No proof.
Detectives plan to follow up on Sean's alibi. In the meantime, more tips come in.
Investigators learned about a shooting that happened a week prior, and they said figuring out that this could be connected to the shooting.
On August 2nd, a man opened fire on a home on Frank Street, just 3 houses down from the scene of Anthony's shooting.
A male subject came in the evening, stood in the front yard, and opened fire into the house through the front windows of the house.
There were 9 people inside the home. Based on witness statements of individuals inside the home, it appears that one of the first or second rounds caused the blinds, the window dressings to fall. There were 2 small children, toddlers really, who were playing in the floor of the living room. He continued to fire multiple rounds into the house before fleeing the scene.
There were several people at home at the time, including a grandmother, a pregnant woman, and children.
Somehow, no one was killed.
The shooting was immediately reported by the family that lived there. The male subject inside had either been grazed by a bullet or by glass, and so he needed some medical treatment. The family was clearly traumatized by the shooting.
Investigators identified a suspect in the shooting.
One of the residents of that home. She did not know his name, but she knew him to go by Q.
The next day, by utilizing the nicknames that had been given to us, we were able to produce a photo lineup, go back to the family, and one of the young women was willing to cooperate with us and identify him as the shooter.
They learned that his real name is Quinteris Miller, and he was just 17 years old.
Based on her identification and the other evidence collected in the investigation, Miller was charged with those 9 counts of attempted murder and discharging a firearm into dwelling. Police were able to obtain warrants for his arrest on those charges, but he evaded police.
We knew that through tips that he had gone back to Chester and was in hiding. And so we contacted the City of Chester Police and the Chester County Sheriff's Department, and let them know that, he was wanted for an attempted murder, and they began doing surveillance and looking for him.
There's no clear connection between these two incidents, just rumors.
When we see these crimes happen in the neighborhoods, we know that there are witnesses, but oftentimes people don't want to speak up because of their distrust for law enforcement, for one, and that relationship has been strained. In addition to that, they're fearful of retaliation.
You have 2 shootings just a few houses away from each other within a week. Are they connected? The only way to find out is to find Quinteris and talk to him.
Anthony Hart dies during a shooting in his Rock Hill neighborhood. Police look to question the suspect in another shooting, Quinteris Miller.
He allegedly shot into a house full of people, which included a toddler and a senior citizen. There's a warrant for his arrest now, but now he's on the run.
Word on the street is that the 2 shootings are connected.
People are saying that the same person who shot up the house shot Anthony, but police don't know if that's true, and if that's true, what the connection might be.
As police continue to hunt for Quinteris, they take a closer look at the first shooting.
The family did tell us that it happened probably because of the fight that took place there in their front yard earlier that day. The family made the connection for us because they knew that Quinteris was present at both incidents.
On August 2nd, a man by the name of Swedarius Beatty got into an argument or a fight of some sort with his girlfriend at the time.
Beatty's girlfriend is Quinteris Miller's sister.
He received a call from his sister that she was there, and so he went over there to help protect his sister.
Quinteris Miller arrived on Frank Street with a group of other people to confront Mr. Beatty about the altercation with his sister. During that confrontation, things escalated.
A young woman got out some pepper spray, and she sprayed Quinteris' sister and everyone who was in her car. Quinteris got mad about that and hit the pepper spray out of the young woman's hand. Well, that was Beatty's sister, so Beatty got mad and attacked Quinteris with the brick.
Suddenly, Beatty hits him in the face with a brick and knocks him unconscious.
And then he began to, again, hit Quinteris more times while he was unconscious.
The witness goes on to tell police that some good Samaritans jumped in to help.
There were 2 individuals about 2 houses down, a father and son, who were sitting on their porch and observing this go down in front of the houses on Frank Street. And after Mr. Miller had been knocked unconscious, Beatty was on top of him and continued to assault him. These 2 men got up and ran to help Mr. Miller, and they were able to effectively get Beatty off of him.
Anthony and his dad ran over and broke up the fight. And then Quinteris' sister and their friends were able to drag him into a car and get him out of there. No one was charged for anything that took place there because all the parties did not want to cooperate or press charges.
Rumor has it that Quinteris left the incident humiliated.
Beatty essentially got the best of Mr. Miller.
He felt very disrespected by the fact that he had been hit with the brick, and so he wanted revenge.
So at this point, Quinteris is embarrassed. He's been humiliated. Here you've come to help your sister, but you underestimated what you were walking into. So you expected to come in and save your sister, but instead, really someone had to save you. So now he's got to figure out what is he going to do to eliminate that, to make sure that he's not going to be made fun of, that people are not going to lose respect for him. Because oftentimes that's what it's about. It's about respect. And whether someone's going to challenge you or not, you've got to come back and make sure that you reestablish and retaliate for what has happened to you.
Miller returns to Frank Street and he approaches the house there, and standing approximately 10 feet from the living room window, he opens fire with a pistol into the home.
Swaderis lived in that home with several family members, so it's suspected that Quinteris was just shooting into the home hoping to hit Swaderis. It's clear what happened there that day, but what does any of this have to do with Anthony Hart?
On August 13th, we got an anonymous tip.
The tipster says she overheard a disturbing conversation between Quinteris and two other men, Gabriel Mobley and Xavier Thompson, the night before Anthony's murder.
She heard the Miller and the others discussing what he had on his mind that night, that he needed a rifle to hit a lick, which is a term that essentially means that he wants to commit some sort of crime.
Gabriel says his brother has a rifle that he offers to Quinteris.
Gabriel Mobley retrieved the gun from inside the house and gave it to Mr. Miller.
The tipster says the men left the house immediately.
All three young men, Gabriel, Xavier, and Quinteris, left with the gun towards Frank Street.
Moments later, the tipster says she heard gunfire.
Witnesses say she heard gunshots. We know that this is the same day and time that Anthony was shot. And we know that three men headed in the same direction, and this is the same gun that killed Anthony.
The hunt for 17-year-old Quinteris Miller, a suspect in multiple crimes, including the murder of Anthony Hart.
A tipster tells police that Gabriel Mobley gave Quinteris a rifle that he may have used to kill Anthony, so they searched his home.
Because he was on probation, we had the right to search him and his house based on this tip that we got. And so we searched the house thoroughly, and we found a box of .22 caliber ammunition that had been intentionally hidden in the bathroom.
After searching the home, investigators found the bullets that matches the crime scene, but they don't find the gun that killed Anthony Hart.
He could not possess any ammunition at the time, so he was in trouble for that on the probation side of things.
They're getting closer, but there's still so many unanswered questions. Like, why would Quinteris kill Anthony? It just made no sense.
Then, on August 19th, investigators get the chance to ask him.
We knew that through tips that he had gone back to Chester and was in hiding. And so we contacted the City of Chester Police and the Chester County Sheriff's Department, let them know that he was wanted for an attempted murder, and they began doing surveillance and looking for him.
Quinteris was arrested in Chester, then transported to Rock Hill Police Department.
They spotted him getting into a car in downtown Chester. They just simply pulled him over, and he gave no problems. They arrested him and transported him up to Rock Hill for us.
At that point, Quinteris was arrested for attempted murder charges for shooting up the house.
Quinteris agrees to an interview.
He freely told us about the fight that happened in the morning, but then he denied having come back to shoot up Mr. Beatty's house that evening.
He denies involvement in any of the shootings.
Instead, he offers up an alibi.
He denied any involvement, but he did admit that he was in Rock Hill that day, that he was with the Mobleys, and he had claimed that he was playing video games with Gabriel Mobley at the time of the shooting.
And then once we got to the questioning of the murder, he requested a lawyer and he ended the interview and did not discuss that at all. We informed the family of updates of the case as it was going along. So once we had arrested Quinteris for the first shooting, that's when we spoke to the family.
Anthony's dad is familiar with the house where Quinteris allegedly opened fire after the fight.
He and Anthony had friends who lived a couple of houses down from where the incident took place.
It was a very common place for them to be, and that's when he remembered.
He and his son, Anthony, they witnessed a fight on Frank Street.
Anthony's father put two and two together and let me know that he and Anthony had actually intervened in that fight. Because to him, he didn't know that it had anything to do with the murder, and so he didn't think to mention it because it's not uncommon to find teenagers, fighting in the streets. During the fight, Quinteris Miller was knocked unconscious, but the male subject who was assaulting him did not stop hitting him even though he was unconscious. So Anthony and his father intervened to prevent Mr. Miller from getting more injuries while he was unconscious on the ground, and they helped break up the fight.
This is it. This is the connection between the two shootings, but it doesn't make sense.
If Anthony tried to help Quinteris, why would Quinteris seek Anthony out and gun him down?
Meanwhile, a former suspect in Anthony's murder is also in custody on unrelated charges.
Sometime shortly after the murder, Sean Durham was arrested on a completely separate case.
Sean was considered a suspect early on because he got angry and stormed out of the card game when he lost money.
While he was in the York County Detention Center, he was not given a bond for his charges, and he desperately wanted a bond, and so he volunteered to work with the police to clear his name, because obviously he had heard the rumors that he was being named as the shooter in Anthony's case. And so he and his lawyer were cooperative with the police.
On August 24th, Sean and his attorney reach out to detectives.
Sean Durham, he volunteers to help police get Quinteris to confess.
He stated that if he was put in a room with Miller, he felt sure that he could get Miller to talk about it and to admit that he was the shooter in that case. They arranged to have both Miller and Mr. Durham transported from the jail to the law center in Rock Hill, which is where the Rock Hill Police Department is located. They placed a camera and some audio recording equipment in a room. They brought Mr. Miller and Durham into that room.
You just don't want to need Bill.
2015, police in Rock Hill, South Carolina, listen in as Sean Durham attempts to pull a murder confession out of Quinteris Miller.
Quinteris and Sean are placed in a room alone together with a hidden recording device.
The investigators then went into another room where they watched, I believe, a live feed from the camera as Durham spoke with Miller about the incident. And it was that conversation between Miller and Durham that really sealed Q Miller's fate. He asked him, were you just trying to get one under your belt, meaning a murder, taking a life? And Miller just shook his head and laughed.
It would have given Quinteris a lot of street cred, and so he seemed quite happy to talk about the murder with Sean. Sean was able to get Quinteris to open up and talk about the murder because Quinteris would have thought that his information would be safe with Sean. Quinteris looked up to and respected Sean. They ran in the same circles, had the same friends, had been through a lot together.
How many shell cases they found?
And they said they found like 7, 8.
Sean really just approached Quinteris from a position of being sort of excited about hearing the details of the case.
Sean starts pushing. He starts getting at the question that police really want answered. Why? And what Quinteris says is a complete shock.
Why? They want me to be wrong.
And he asked him, he said, you mean you killed the wrong person? And again, he laughed and nodded his head.
That it wasn't even meant for him. That's crazy, man.
He then went on to talk about who the intended target was, that it was Mr. Beatty, and the reason why he was seeking retribution against him for being assaulted and getting knocked out a week before.
Quinteris admitted that he accidentally shot the wrong guy because he thought Anthony was the man who hit him, where in actuality it was Swandarius Beatty who hit him.
Quinteris thought he was returning back to the same house he'd previously shot up, where Swandarius lived.
He still had revenge on his mind, and so he essentially decided he wanted to go back and finish what he had started.
We're talking about a boy who's probably never done anything this serious before. He's walking through an extremely dark area. His eyes may not be adjusted correctly. He was actually several houses down. Quinteris essentially said that he just popped out. He started spraying, which means just shooting the weapon at the two people that he saw.
He mistakenly believed that one of those two men was Mr. Beatty.
You just went from what happened.
He indiscriminately opened fire on these two individuals, striking, one of the bullets struck Mr. Hart in the head and killed him.
Oh, one got hit. Damn, bro, that's crazy, man.
Quinteris knew that he had not killed Beatty, but it didn't have much of an impact on him as to who he had actually killed.
You know where the sound from? Come.
I found it pretty chilling, too, that he showed absolutely no remorse. To find out that you mistakenly killed an innocent man, someone you didn't even know, and to show no contrition or remorse, I thought was particularly chilling about Mr. Miller.
Even more chilling is the fact that Anthony attempted to help Quinteris.
The real tragic irony in this case is that the man that he mistakenly shot, Anthony Hart, was one of the two individuals who saved him a week before when he was being assaulted in front of the houses on Frank Street. Anthony Hart intervened for Miller.
Investigators finally have what they need.
Once we heard Quinteris give that information, it confirmed for us that this was all tied back to the August 2nd shooting at Beatty's home. This was just a 16-year-old who wanted revenge because he got hit in the fist with a brick. It really just made the whole thing that much more tragic.
With that confession, that was enough for officers then to charge Mr. Miller with the murder of Anthony Hart at that time. Under South Carolina law, he was an adult, so he was tried and prosecuted as an adult.
TV One's favorite twosome,
Let's get busy!
is back together again.
Following a taped confession, Quinteris Miller faces over 20 charges, including murder and multiple accounts of attempted murder. Investigators continue to work the case, interviewing his alleged accomplices in the murder, Xavier Thompson and Gabriel Mobley.
G. Mobley and Xavier Thompson went with Quinteris to commit the crime.
They put one another as the accomplice to Quinteris, and they tried to protect themselves. And so Xavier ultimately said, it was Gabriel and Quinteris who went to go do the shooting. Gabriel said, no, it was Xavier and Quinteris who went to do the shooting. So they were being somewhat cooperative, but it was hard to tell which one was telling the truth. It seemed a little bit more spur of the moment for Xavier and Gabriel to be involved in the case. It seemed like they were going along with their friend because it might have been an exciting thing. Maybe they didn't know exactly what he intended to do, although he did take a firearm to go do a lick. They weren't completely unaware.
They tell investigators that they dumped the gun in the woods.
They hid the gun somewhere. We never did find the murder weapon.
Prosecutors don't want to take any chances. They offer Quinteris the opportunity to plea.
Because we did not have direct physical evidence like fingerprints or DNA. There was no video of him committing it. That would still be a strong case, but not a guaranteed one.
For months, Quinteris and his attorneys refuse.
The case was a little bit more than a year old, and we had been unable to reach a plea agreement. The case was set for trial in the early part of 2017. It was actually not until just days before this trial was scheduled to start on a Monday morning that we received confirmation from Mr. Miller's attorney that he wanted to accept our offer to plead guilty. Miller wanted to plead guilty under the doctrine of North Carolina versus Alford, so he did not actually have to admit his guilt, but he acknowledged that there was substantial evidence against him enough that there's a substantial likelihood that a jury would find him guilty. And with the evidence confirmed against him, he accepted the state's offer and pled guilty for the negotiated sentence of 30 years. He cannot be released early, he cannot make parole.
Quinteris does not make a statement or give any details of his crimes.
He was so angry, so bent on getting one guy that he didn't care who else had to get. So in his case, an entire family was traumatized. There were an elderly woman and a pregnant woman, children who their lives were put at risk when Quinteris shot up their home. Obviously, an innocent man, Anthony, lost his life over this, and ultimately Quinteris never got the revenge he wanted.
Part of the tragedy is that he didn't just take Anthony Hart's life, he threw his own life away. And over something as just trivial as being knocked out in a fight. You know, I think that it's clear from his actions, mistakenly shooting the wrong person, that he's a very dangerous person. And his propensity for violence is obvious from the facts and the evidence in the case.
Anthony's killer was caught, and he is getting the consequences for what he did to Anthony. But I'm sure that his family would rather have Anthony alive today than, you know, another young man in prison.
There's just something about Anthony Hart acting as a good Samaritan and intervening for this man who ultimately killed him that just would be so hard for me, I think, to stomach as a family member.
Like, this guy literally was helping you out, and, you know, you not paying attention, or you just filled with rage and want a retaliation, just come out and just start shooting, and not knowing you just took the life of the guy that helped you out. It was crazy. It was just stupid. That shows you what type of person Anthony is. A very, you know, kind person, will give you the shirt off his back and, you know, help anybody in need.
DeAndis was a very sweet kid. The biggest smile, loved to laugh, just loved to have fun.
DeAndis wasn't raised in the streets, but he did get in trouble.
There is someone who had been shot. They're lying on the ground. There's a bunch of blood.
It doesn't look like he saw this coming. He was taken by surprise.
They told me, and it was just, I fell to my knees. I just couldn't believe it.
How do you think would do that to DB?
She lured DeAndis. She thought he was going to just confront him and maybe fight him.
Right now, you look like a cold-blooded killer.
You shoot this guy in the head and then drag him out of the car. No way in hell I was in that car.
This is a case about payback. It's a case about revenge, and it was an execution.
There are shots being fired.
There is a dead male on the scene.
She knew, I have to flee. I have to get away.
In this first episode of a two-part special, we reveal a tragic tale of greed.
There was an uptick in robberies involving wigs and other hair products.
And bitter revenge.
It was the worst night and the worst phone call that I have ever received.
In a payback story where nothing is as it first seems.
Now the police cannot trust anything that she says.
It was hard to believe that someone that young was going to be involved in something like this.
At 3:25 p.m. on January 22, 2016, police in Memphis, Tennessee, received multiple 911 calls about shots fired at an apartment complex near a school in the eastern suburb of Cordova.
The crime rate was lower in that area than some others, and to hear those shots ring out startled neighbors, startled children.
Children are being released out of school. To have those kids being released, getting off the bus, and this type of event is taking place, had to been really scary.
Memphis police respond quickly.
They see this young man laying in the parking lot in his own blood with multiple gunshot wounds.
Officers secure the area, finding no sign of an active shooter.
They see that they're not in danger. They see that they can't save him. He's pronounced dead at the scene.
A wallet in the man's pocket contains a driver's license.
They are able to ID the body of the male deceased victim as Eddie Tate Jr.
There is no shortage of stunned onlookers in the parking lot.
This is in the middle of the day. It's in an apartment complex. So once these shots were fired, there was a lot of activity. We had multiple witnesses.
They report seeing a dark green Honda in the lot. After the gunshots, a black woman got out of the Honda and did something unexpected.
This woman exited the vehicle, came around to the driver's side, removed Eddie Tate's body.
A female drags the male victim out of the vehicle, gets in the vehicle and drives off. So on the surface, we're thinking, a carjacking.
Is Eddie's death a tragic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or is there more to this chaotic scene than meets the eye?
We quickly realized that it was not what we thought it was in the beginning.
Edward James Tate Jr. was born on August 27, 1985, to parents Eddie Tate Sr. and Gloria Adams.
And he was born in Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, at St. Francis Hospital, 6 pounds and 11 ounces. Bouncing, handsome boy. To me, my pride and joy, my only child.
Growing up in the small town of Oakland, just east of Memphis, Eddie, known to his friends and family as EJ, was independent and curious.
EJ, he was different. He's very quiet. He's well-mannered. He read a lot of books, and he was intelligent. He stayed to himself. He was a loner.
In 2000, Eddie entered Fayette Ware High School in Somerville, where he emerged from his quiet shell and eventually became vice president of his freshman class.
He went there for 4 years, and when he after graduated, he went to ITT, technical school. He majored in engineering. And for some reason or another, he didn't want to actually continue doing engineering. He wanted to be more out there on his own.
Around 2005, Eddie went into business with his cousin Mario.
Mario wanted to do hair. He said hair was on the market. It was really going to sell and make money. So he told EJ he wanted him to come into the business with him. So EJ said, oh, okay.
The culture in Memphis with hair or weaves, it's huge, especially within the Black community. Our hair is very important to us because just from the beginning of time, it was the one thing I believe we could kind of own. So coming to, America, being, enslaved, oftentimes we didn't have control of our bodies. That hair was the one thing we could kind of, it could give us our own personality and our own sense of self.
And so if you come to Memphis, Tennessee, you will see that everybody's hair is done to a T, and if it's not done, they're headed there. And this is not just for women. This is for men as well. They spend hours in the barbershop. They spend hours at salons. And so this is a cultural thing.
Eddie and Mario focused on importing and selling natural human hair of the highest quality. It was more expensive, but they wanted to offer the best.
It's hair that's untreated, unbleached, untampered with in any way. It's pure hair.
Just to go to a storefront to buy your hair, it's not always the best choice. So EJ offered that. EJ offered this luxury hair. And the best part about it, he would deliver it to you.
A lot of people, especially in certain communities, expect that you're going to be able to, if you're paying $200, $300, $400, $500, $1,000, that you might, be able to get this hand delivered to you as well.
In his personal life, Eddie was also building a future with his new wife.
EJ had gotten married, and during that time, they had moved to Mason, Tennessee, over in Covington. They was inseparable. They did everything together. Their love was unique. They was great together.
In 2009, the couple welcomed a daughter. Eddie was a devoted father, but he struggled to remain a committed husband.
He had wandering eyes. EJ went to wandering a little bit. His attention went to branching out. Finally, they decided they would go their own separate ways.
Although Eddie moved back to his childhood home in Somerville, he and his ex worked together to co-parent their daughter.
There's no arguing, no feuding, no disagreement. They would all be courteous to each other.
And in his professional life, Eddie and his cousin Mario continued to expand their business, dubbed Virgin Hair for Us.
And they both would go out in different separate areas in Fayette County and do the hair. Well, as they continued to do hair, their name became very popular. Then they decided, well, we're going to branch out more than Fayette County. We're just doing great with hair. So then it came into Shelby County.
Business was booming, but Eddie was lonely.
Maybe 2 years later, he met Edwina. We called her Wee Wee.
Edwina Marquette Thomas worked at a local hospital and was a single mother to 2 daughters. She made a strong first impression.
I think EJ fell in love with her because of her smile. Edwina has the prettiest smile that you have ever seen. She was just a good person, all around.
He said, Ma, I met a girl. He said, she quiet. She has 2 children. I said, oh, okay. And he said, he said, she got a sweet family. She got a sweet family.
Soon after they started dating, Eddie brought Edwina and her daughters to meet his mother.
They all came to attend my birthday. And it was always a joyful event. They was close, you could tell.
A few months later, the couple decided to move in together.
She had a genuine love, she did. You could see it on her face, she loved EJ. And EJ was with her, and he seemed to be, he was happy.
On January 22nd, 2016, the couple's future is shattered by bullets. Eddie Tate Jr. lies dead in the parking lot of an apartment building in a Memphis suburb. Witnesses have described a car and a woman they think were part of the incident.
There was a green Honda Civic, a female passenger in the vehicle who later removed Eddie's body from the vehicle, jumped into the driver's seat, and fled the scene.
Then, investigators learned that there was another suspicious vehicle that might have been involved.
One of the witnesses that I spoke to had said that they saw two cars driving away real fast right after the shots. One of them was green, the other was a gray or silver car.
A witness was able to identify both the green Honda Civic that was there on the scene minutes before the shooting took place. Also exiting the scene, a witness was also able to identify a silver Mitsubishi.
They both, once the shooting was over, fled at a high rate of speed. We assumed that one of them would have been a suspect car, one of them would have been a victim car, but of course, at that time, we didn't know for certain.
Memphis detectives continue to work this scene of a shooting that left 30-year-old Eddie Tate Jr. dead. Multiple witnesses recall a green Honda and a silver Mitsubishi fleeing the scene in the moments after the shots rang out.
As it turns out, our witnesses hear the gunshots. There's anywhere from several seconds to a minute delay. Then they look out and see what they see. So we did not actually have an eyewitness to the shooting. We had multiple witnesses that saw right after what transpired.
Some saw a young black woman in the green car. Another saw the driver of the silver car, who was also a young black woman.
They look out, and then they see her running toward a silver Mitsubishi. She falls, and then she gets in the vehicle by herself and drives off at a high rate of speed.
The same witness has another important piece of information: the tag number for the silver car.
They gave that to the officers. The officers put out a broadcast to be on the lookout for it.
The witness accounts are consistent when it comes to the woman in the green Honda and the woman in the silver Mitsubishi. But from there, the details vary, including a possible third woman.
Several of the witnesses saw someone in multicolored leggings go inside the victim's green Honda.
They may or may not be looking for a third person, the person who is rummaging through the vehicle.
Witnesses, they see different things at different times. I may see you in a green shirt. Someone else may see you in a dark colored shirt. So, and that's kind of the situation that we ran into. Several clothing descriptions, several activities that people were doing, and we had to, kind of weed through that.
While detectives continue taking statements, forensic techs scour the crime scene for evidence.
Homicide detectives look at the body. They see that Eddie Tate Jr. was shot 4 times.
They found several projectiles and casings from a 9mm. Without the gun, you couldn't tell for sure. It is very likely that they all came from the same 9mm handgun.
Eddie Tate's wallet was accounted for. There was still money present in Eddie Tate's wallet.
Then, detectives get word that the chaos isn't over. It's still unfolding just around the corner.
Someone had come and flagged down some officers and said, hey, that they had a female that pulled up in front of their apartment that was beating on their door. When they opened the door, she said, I'm shot, and he's dead.
EMS, the ambulance, and other first responders rushed to the scene because the victim in this instance is still alive.
She wasn't talking. She was on her way to unresponsive.
By the time detectives arrive, the woman is already being rushed to the hospital. But outside the apartment, investigators spot the dark green Honda with a broken window and 2 bullet holes.
We have, this female that's shot, and then their car's parked outside, and I looked in it, and it's all covered in blood. I talked to the people in the apartment, and basically that's, their story was that they were at home, and then all of a sudden they hear a knock on the door, someone screaming for help. They open the door, and she says that she's been shot.
She was losing breath, like she was running out of breath, so they had her sit down. And she said as she sat down, the lady had a yellow couch, if I'm not mistaken, and she said the couch just started turning red. And she said at that moment, that's when they realized, okay, we need to get her help.
Investigators theorized the woman was also a victim in the attack, sitting in the passenger seat of the Honda when gunfire erupted.
Her survival instincts kicked in, and she knew, I have to flee. I have to get away. She immediately went into action. She pulled Eddie out of the car. She got over in that driver's seat, and she fled. She drove herself to safety, trying her best to save herself.
I can't imagine how she was feeling at the time, knowing I'm fighting for my life.
Detectives learned the woman is undergoing emergency surgery at a local hospital. She has been identified as 33-year-old Edwina Wee Wee Thomas, the girlfriend of the other shooting victim, Eddie Tate.
They were doing everything they could to keep her alive.
Edwina Thomas, known to loved ones as Wee Wee, is undergoing surgery at a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. The single mother sustained multiple life-threatening gunshot wounds during the attack that killed her boyfriend, Eddie Tate Jr.
We know that there is a dead male on the scene and a victim that has been shot, transported to the hospital. So then, of course, we sent an investigator to the hospital, but she was already in surgery.
While they await word from doctors, detectives need to have a difficult conversation with Eddie's loved ones.
I was asked to make the notification to Eddie Tate's family. Once I get there, I explain to them who I am, what I'm here for.
He said, Miss Tate, you might want to sit down. And he came in and I said, where is he in the med? That's when you get hurt so bad. I said, he in the med. And he said, no. And I said, why are you here? And he said, ma'am, I got to tell you, your son is gone. I said, gone? He said, he got killed. The policeman said he got killed. And I fell to my knees and I just screamed. I couldn't even scream. And I said, Lord God, you took my baby. You took all I had in life. And I just started crying and screaming. And I said, who killed him? Who killed my child? And he said, whoever killed him, they got away.
And it's not just Eddie who was shot.
And he said, well, we got shot numerous places too, in her stomach and other places on her body. He said, but she's in a bad shape too.
The news is even more brutal given what Eddie shared with Gloria just 2 days before.
He called me that Wednesday night. He said, you might be getting another little grandbaby. And I said, oh, well, I'm slow. I said, another grandbaby? I said, where? Mom, what you mean, where? I said, I oh, wee. Like that, I said, oh, we be pregnant. He said, yeah, we be pregnant.
Eddie's mother goes on to tell investigators that her son and his cousin Mario ran a cash business selling expensive hair bundles. That meant meeting up with people they sometimes didn't know, all while carrying large amounts of cash.
Virgin hair starts at about $120, and that's really just for a straight, let's just say 10 to 12 inch. The more you go up in inches, the more costly it is. If you're looking for anything over 22 inches, it's very possible for you to spend in the thousands for those.
As a precaution, she says, Eddie never went on deliveries alone.
Wherever he was at to go deliver the hair, he always would have a rider. I would ride with him, or his girlfriend would ride with him, but he always had just one person that would ride with him to deliver all the hair.
Eddie's mother tells investigators that Eddie and Edwina were making deliveries on the day of the shooting.
He had called me at 2 o'clock that day. He said, oh, I'll just call to holler at you. I said, okay. I said, what you finna do? He said, well, I got this old chicken head. I'm finna go sell some hair to it.
He did not name the buyer, but said she was a repeat customer.
He said, I sold some hair to her this morning at 8 o'clock. And he said, I'm gonna go take the hair, take her some hair, take hair back to her. She said it wasn't the right length and she didn't like it. And she called me back and said that she wanted her money back. And he said, you know, we don't give money back. I let her know I'll give her a different grade of hair. I'll let her look at some more hair, but we don't refund the money.
Eddie had his wallet on him when he was found, but it did not contain the amount of money expected after a big sale. Also, investigators did not find any bundles of hair in Eddie's green Honda. As investigators wrap up with Gloria, they know there is still one person who might be able to tell them what happened: Edwina.
The police would say, we rushed her to the hospital. I said, well, he said, well, maybe she'll gain conscience where she can talk and tell who had actually did the shooting.
Investigators in Memphis are looking into the brutal midday shooting of Eddie Tate Jr. and Edwina Thomas. Witnesses had seen Edwina drive off in Eddie's green Honda, as well as another woman driving another car.
There was a silver Mitsubishi that was also unseen, and a witness was able to at least provide the details, including the license plate of that vehicle.
Some witnesses also reported a possible third woman wearing multicolored leggings rummaging through Eddie's car after the shots rang out. When detectives check on Edwina, doctors advise that her injuries are critical. She has 2 gunshot wounds, one to her kidney and intestine, and the other to her left forearm. But there's more: the poignant and harrowing detail that Edwina is 8 weeks pregnant. It's unclear whether Edwina and her unborn child will survive. Edwina Marquette Thomas was born on June 13, 1982, in Fayette County, Tennessee. She grew up with 2 sisters, 4 brothers, and a host of cousins.
Our family is pretty huge. We would all just meet at my grandmother's house on Sunday.
The older people, they would cook, and the younger crowd, like, we're outside having water balloon fights, and it was a great feeling, like, just to have your family around.
Wee Wee was my first cousin, but we kind of grew up as sisters. Just a great person, an amazing person, amazing friend, my very first best friend.
As a big sister, she was like a second mom. She treated me like her kid.
She liked to pull the big sister card to let me know, hey, I'm the boss, mom's gone, you have to listen to me. So sometimes we bumped heads, but you know, for the most part, it was fun. You know, I hung out with her a lot. She kind of taught me a lot.
As a teenager, Edwina attended Fayette Ware High School in Somerville, where she commanded attention.
We loved clothes. Like, she loved to look nice, she loved to dress nice, and she loved boys. She was popular with the guys, so I guess that's a good thing.
In 1999, Edwina fell in love.
That was her man, that was her boyfriend, that was her first real solid love.
Edwina became pregnant, but soon after the birth of her daughter, the relationship ended.
Just like any other breakup, in the beginning it's not good. But as we got older, you know, and you understand that parenting is the most important thing, they reconnected, and so they ended up on good terms, which is a good thing.
Edwina took the responsibilities of being a single mom head on.
She did go on to Concord Medical, so she got a degree from there, and she started working at the hospital.
Over the next few years, Edwina gave birth to another daughter and faced more heartbreak in her personal life.
She really didn't date much until she met Crystal's dad, which was her second daughter. So then after those two, she met a new boyfriend. They had moved in together, plans on marriage, but he got into a motorcycle accident and he passed away.
The loss was devastating. Edwina was unsure if she would love again.
She just, you know, was still dealing with that grief before she opened back up to someone else.
Eventually, that someone was Eddie Tate Jr.
When she started to date him, we saw a totally different side of her. It's like a more open, more loving, she just was happier. She was a happier person when she met him. You could just tell, like, he really cared, and he was her protector.
But now, Eddie has died from 4 gunshot wounds, and Memphis doctors fight to save Edwina's life. However, her injuries are too severe.
Edwina was later pronounced at the hospital.
It means her baby passed away too. For the second time in a matter of hours, detectives must deliver devastating news to another family.
My mom called and I merged her in with me and my sister, and she was crying.
I just remember her saying, she's gone, somebody killed her. And at that moment, I remember dropping the phone and I fell to the floor. I fell to the floor crying. I could hear my mom crying. I could hear my brother crying.
That night was one of the, I'm not gonna say one of the worst nights. It was the worst night and the worst phone call that I have ever received in 34 years of living.
For detectives working the case, news of Edwina's and her unborn child's deaths means that the stakes are even higher.
She was about 6 to 8 weeks pregnant, meaning that law enforcement, they're no longer dealing with a homicide or a double homicide. Now they're dealing with a triple homicide.
News of the daytime shooting deaths of Eddie Tate Jr., Edwina Thomas, and their unborn child tears through Memphis, leaving the community outraged and on edge.
This was a young couple and a child that had not been born yet, so it poured on the heartstrings of many. And with that, the community, law enforcement, families, the families of the victims, they wanted justice.
Detectives have one lead, a silver Mitsubishi witnesses saw speeding from the scene. A bolo on the vehicle's tag number produces nothing. Then, an officer notices a critical mistake.
The tag number on the vehicle Either between the witness calling in or the dispatcher, the last number was either transposed or it was incorrect. So initially, we were looking for the wrong car. And one of the officers changed the number up on the last digit, and it came back to a silver Mitsubishi. Had an address about 3 miles away from the shooting scene.
And records eventually reveal a very surprising person of interest.
Detectives determined that the driver of that silver Mitsubishi is 18-year-old high school student Victoria C.
Investigators run Victoria's name through a database of criminal records.
Victoria, she has a clean record. She's never been in trouble with the law.
The first thing that I really recognized was that she was really young. You know, it was hard to believe that someone that young was going to be involved in something like this.
Could this young woman really be a cold-blooded killer?
Detectives locate Victoria's residence, and it is her mother who answers the door.
She's informed us that, yes, her daughter's driving a car. And what did the police need with her daughter? So at that point, we asked her to have her daughter come home. She called Victoria Say on the phone and said that the police officers were there and wanted to talk with her. Victoria showed up probably 10 or 15 minutes later. She was acting very normal. She wasn't, she wasn't asking us why we were there. She wasn't asking us what was going on. She wasn't arguing, she wasn't combative or anything. And so she got into the squad car and they brought her down to the office.
Police also take possession of the silver Mitsubishi.
We verified that the tag information given us by the witness is what was on the vehicle. So we just immediately towed it to the impound lot so that, once the initial investigation slowed down, we'd get a warrant for the vehicle. So we go into the interview room and introduce ourselves. Victoria's very calm. She's asked, obviously, the question about the shooting. Are you responsible for this? She says no. She never denied being on the scene, but she said she was not responsible for shooting the victims.
The questioning lasts several hours.
The detectives, they dig in real hard with Victoria. They let her know. We have witnesses that place you at the scene. So Victoria bends a little bit.
Victoria explains that she was spending the day with her friend and high school classmate, Shelby Isaac.
Shelby and Victoria were very good friends and had been for a while. They did know each other during high school. Victoria would do Shelby's hair. Shelby would buy hair for herself and then have Victoria put it in for her.
Victoria said they had met up earlier in the day with Eddie, the victim, to purchase some hair weave.
The trio met in the parking lot of a local fast food restaurant to make the transaction.
She and Shelby Isaac had went over there to meet the hairman and bought $250 hair from him.
Victoria explains that Shelby didn't really inspect the hair until later.
We learned that Shelby had decided that she didn't like the quality of the hair that she had purchased from Eddie.
And there was some discussion after that Shelby wanted to get her money back. There was a phone call made to Eddie Tate, wanted to meet him in the Sycamore Lakes apartments where Shelby Isaac lives. And they proceeded to go to that location.
Victoria says she drove Shelby to the apartment complex where Shelby lived to meet up with Eddie for the second time.
As they get ready to park, Shelby sees Eddie's green car, and obviously it's the car that they had met earlier, so Shelby gets out of the car.
Their initial suspect is about to explain her version of what happened on that terrible day. After Eddie Tate Jr., his girlfriend Edwina Thomas, and their unborn baby were killed in a shooting, Memphis police questioned 18-year-old Victoria C. about the crime. Victoria says that she and her friend, 18-year-old Shelby Isaac, met up with Eddie to negotiate a refund for a hair bundle.
She was unhappy with her purchase, so she went to get her money back.
Victoria claims she drove Shelby to the apartment complex, and then Shelby got out, leaving her to park.
As Victoria's parking the car, Shelby's already out walking over to Eddie's car. According to Victoria, she hears gunshots. She sees Shelby with the gun in her hand. She screams, "Oh my God," and then Victoria runs back to her vehicle. She falls right before she gets in, and then she drives off at a high rate of speed. She leaves Shelby. She drives across the street to another apartment complex and starts calling Shelby. "Hey, are you okay? Where are you?" Shelby says, "I'm right up here at the front. Come and get me." So Victoria pulls up to the front of the complex, picks Shelby up, they drive off.
Victoria places the blame directly on her friend Shelby, even claiming Shelby confessed to her.
Victoria then says that Shelby told her that she shot Eddie and that he was dead, and that there was another lady in the car and she had blacked out. She said that while she was standing there, the lady came to and said, "I'm pregnant." And so Shelby said that she did not shoot her again. Victoria said that after they went to a friend's house.
Victoria tells them the friend's name is Darian Melvin. She says that a few hours later, she dropped Shelby off with another friend, Gary Dotson.
Shelby and Victoria show up where Gary's staying. Victoria leaves in the silver Mitsubishi. Shelby stays there. And then Victoria gets a call from her mom. And her mom wants to know, why is the police at her house?
Victoria swears she was not the one who pulled the trigger. But is she just trying to protect herself?
When Victoria named Shelby Isaac as the shooter, we didn't know if she was lying. We didn't know if she was trying to blame someone else. At that time, we weren't 100% sure. Did we have the shooter or did we have the driver?
Police arrest Victoria C. while they work to figure out the truth of what happened.
Victoria, she was charged with accessory after the fact, which is a very, very low-grade felony.
Police cannot trust anything that Victoria says, and they have to corroborate everything that she just told them. So now they have to focus on where was Shelby at, and who is Shelby Isaacs?
The answer to those and many other questions lies in the next installment of this two-part special.
Are we 100% sure we got this right before we put murder charges on people?
If you follow the evidence, it does not lead you to Shelby. She's a good student, had her eyes on college.
Coming up, a surprising new claim reveals another possible suspect.
2 other witnesses described seeing a man on the scene.
And a trial that's one for the ages.
The judge didn't want to try this case.
I just screamed, I want justice for my child.
the judge says. Have you reached a verdict?
We didn't.
Be sure to find out how it all ends next.
We've got one deceased victim on the scene. We've got one victim pronounced at the hospital. And she was 6 to 8 weeks pregnant. So we have a triple homicide.
Hair is your crown. And the one thing you can control is your crown.
She was going to get her money back.
In this second episode of a two-part special, we wrap up a complex mystery.
Who's our shooter? Who's our driver? Are we 100% sure we got this right?
Featuring unexpected suspects.
She looked like a schoolgirl. I mean, she was very young.
2 other witnesses described seeing a man on the scene.
And a trial filled with surprises.
We didn't know which way it was going to go.
I want justice for my child.